The most powerful force in money often looks boring while it is working. That is the trouble with compounding. It does not usually arrive with drama. It does not kick the door open and announce, "Please clap, I am creating a fortune." It works quietly, slowly, almost invisibly, and then after enough time it produces results that look impossible to anyone who missed the long middle. Welcome back. In this part of the psychology of money, we cover compounding, the difference between getting wealthy and staying wealthy, the importance of tail events, and Housel's most emotionally important chapter, freedom. Chapter 4, Confounding Compounding, begins with a lesson that many people understand intellectually but underestimate emotionally. Compound growth is not intuitive. Humans are used to linear thinking. If something grows steadily for a few years, we expect the future to look like a simple extension of the past. Compounding breaks that instinct because the biggest gains often arrive late. Housel uses Warren Buffett as the great example, not merely because Buffett is a skilled investor, but because he has been investing for an extraordinarily long time. The secret is not one secret. It is skill plus time plus endurance. A huge part of Buffett's fortune comes from the fact that he began early and kept going for decades. The engine had time to run. This matters because people often search for the highest return while underrating the number of years that return can be sustained. A spectacular return that lasts briefly may be less important than a good return that can continue for a lifetime. The duller path may win because it survives long enough for compounding to become absurd. Compounding is hard to respect because its curve is backloaded. The first years may feel unimpressive. You save, invest, wait, and the result looks almost insulting. Is this it? This is the miracle? A few percent and a graph that needs a magnifying glass? But the point is not the early slope. The point is what happens when gains begin earning gains, and then those gains earn more gains. Housel's lesson is not only financial. Good habits, reputation, knowledge, trust, and relationships can compound too. But money makes the lesson measurable. The person who gives time to a decent plan often beats the person who keeps interrupting a brilliant plan. Chapter 5, Getting Wealthy versus Staying Wealthy, adds the survival rule. Getting money and keeping money are not the same skill. Getting money may require optimism, risk-taking, ambition, and confidence. Keeping money requires humility, fear, frugality, and an almost paranoid respect for what can go wrong. This is one of the book's most useful distinctions. A person can be great at offense and terrible at defense. They can build wealth and then lose it because the same risk appetite that created the fortune becomes fatal when the goal should shift toward endurance. Financial success is not just reaching a number. It is staying in the game. Survival sounds uninspiring until you remember that you cannot compound if you are forced out. The best plan is not the plan with the most impressive theoretical return. It is the plan that can survive recessions, mistakes, job loss, medical bills, bear markets, emotional stress, bad timing, and the occasional urge to do something heroic and deeply unnecessary. Housel argues that room for error is not a sign of weakness. It is the fuel that lets you endure. Cash may look inefficient during a bull market, but it can prevent forced selling. A conservative assumption may look timid when everything is rising, but it can keep a plan alive when the world remembers gravity. This chapter also introduces a barbell attitude, optimistic about the long run, paranoid about the short run. That combination is powerful. Pure optimism can become reckless. Pure pessimism can freeze a person into inaction. But long-term optimism with short-term caution says, the future may be good, and I still need to survive Tuesday. Chapter 6, Tails, You Win, explains why a small number of events can drive most outcomes. In investing, business, and creative work, Returns are often dominated by tails, rare outlier events that produce a disproportionate share of the result. A portfolio can be mediocre in many places and still do well if a few holdings become enormous winners. This idea is easy to miss because everyday life feels averaged. We want every decision to look sensible, every investment to work, every project to succeed. But many fields do not operate that way. A few big wins can pay for many small failures. Venture capital understands this. So do movie studios, publishers, and investors who own broad portfolios. The psychological problem is that tails require tolerating a lot of ordinary disappointment. If a few winners drive the result, then many things will look unimpressive or fail. That does not necessarily mean the strategy is broken. It may mean the strategy is behaving exactly as tail-driven systems behave. This matters for individual investors because impatience can interrupt the tail. If you sell every holding that looks boring or abandon every strategy during its dry spell, you may remove the very chance for compounding and outliers to work. Patience is not passive. It is an active refusal to demand that every month prove the whole plan. But Housel is not telling readers to gamble wildly in search of tails. The tail lesson works best with diversification and endurance. You do not need to predict the exact winner if you own enough of the field and stay long enough for winners to emerge. The miracle is not constant brilliance. It is structured participation. Then, Chapter 7, Freedom, brings the book down from markets into life. Housel argues that the highest dividend money pays is control over your time. Not luxury, not applause, not a car that makes strangers briefly wonder whether you're important. Control. This chapter is the emotional center of the book. Money matters because it can buy independence. It can let you choose how to spend your day, whom to work with, when to rest, where to live, and how much of your life is directed by other people's urgent demands. That kind of control is easy to underrate until you do not have it. Housel connects freedom with happiness. The ability to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, for as long as you want, is an extraordinary form of wealth. It may not photograph well. It may not impress someone at a traffic light, but it changes the texture of daily life. This reframes saving. Saving is not just delayed consumption. Saving is the purchase of future options. Every dollar not spent can become a small piece of independence. It can become the ability to leave a bad job, handle an emergency, take an opportunity, spend time with family, or simply avoid panic when life misbehaves. The irony is that many people trade freedom for the appearance of wealth. They buy things that increase fixed obligations, then need higher income to support those obligations, then lose flexibility. The visible symbols of success can quietly reduce the invisible freedom that made success desirable in the first place. Housel is not against spending. He is against confusing spending with freedom. A purchase can bring joy, comfort, or usefulness. But if lifestyle rises faster than independence, money becomes a leash with leather seats. These 4 chapters fit together. Compounding needs time. Time requires survival. Survival requires humility and room for error. Tail outcomes require patience. And the reason to endure all of this is not to win a scoreboard. It is to gain freedom over your life. For a viewer, the practical question is simple. Are your financial choices increasing your future control or decreasing it? Does your lifestyle give you options, or does it demand obedience? Are you chasing the highest possible return, or building a plan you can actually hold through fear, boredom, and temptation? The second movement of the book is a defense of boring strength. Save, invest, diversify, avoid ruin, respect time. Let good things compound. Keep enough flexibility that one bad month does not force one terrible decision. This is easy to say and hard to practice because the market rewards patience in a way that often feels like nothing is happening. But that is the point. A tree does not look busy while it grows. A strong financial life may look quiet from the outside because the most important work is happening in time, not theater. Thank you for watching this second part. Next, we turn to the invisible side of wealth. Why the car does not make people admire you the way you think, why real wealth is what you do not see, and why saving can matter even when you do not have a specific goal. Final close. The goal is not to squeeze every possible dollar out of every possible moment. The goal is to build enough endurance, patience, and independence that money begins serving your life instead of quietly owning it. The compounding chapter also teaches patience at a scale most people underestimate. If the greatest gains arrive late, then interruption is costly. Selling too early, changing strategies constantly, or demanding visible proof every year can prevent the curve from ever reaching its powerful stage. Compounding is not only a mathematical process, it is a behavioral test. That test is difficult because humans crave feedback. We like progress we can see. We like evidence that our effort is working. A long-term investment plan may spend years looking unimpressive, especially compared with whatever exciting asset is currently winning dinner table conversations. The temptation is to abandon boring strength for visible momentum. Housel's warning is that visible momentum can be a terrible substitute for durable compounding. The survival chapter gives the emotional counterweight to ambition. Many people want to know how to get the highest return. Fewer ask what level of risk lets them stay invested when life becomes unpleasant. But the second question may matter more. A plan that doubles quickly and then collapses is not superior to a plan that grows steadily and survives. Survival also means protecting yourself from your own future reactions. It is easy to say you will be brave during a crash while the market is calm. It is harder when the headlines are ugly, your account balance is falling, and every confident commentator suddenly sounds like a disaster prophet with studio lighting. Room for error is partly a protection against circumstances and partly a protection against panic. The Tales chapter asks us to tolerate imperfection. This is a hard ask in investing because every loser feels like evidence that you're doing something wrong. But in tail-driven systems, many ordinary or failed outcomes are part of the structure. A broad index fund, for example, does not need every company to become wonderful. A small number of large winners can carry a large share of long-term returns. This insight can reduce shame and overmanagement. If you expect every decision to be a winner, you may constantly tinker. If you understand that a few outcomes may do most of the work, you may become more willing to let a diversified plan breathe. The goal is not perfect foresight. The goal is participation in a system where outliers can work for you. Freedom then explains why all of this matters. The point of saving and investing is not to become a more impressive spreadsheet. It is to create control. Control might mean leaving a job that damages your health. It might mean saying no to a client who treats every request like a hostage situation. It might mean spending more time with children, parents, friends, or work that feels meaningful. Money used this way can be quiet. It may not produce a dramatic lifestyle upgrade. It may simply reduce dependence. It may let you wait. It may let you choose. It may let you avoid desperate decisions. That kind of wealth can be invisible to other people, but deeply felt by the person who has it. There's also a warning here about lifestyle creep. If every raise becomes a permanent expense, freedom does not grow. The income rises, the house expands, the car improves, the vacations become nicer, and somehow the feeling of pressure remains. This is how people can appear successful and still feel trapped. Their money bought more obligations before it bought more independence. Housel's second movement is therefore a defense of time and optionality. Time lets compounding work. Survival lets time continue. Tail events reward staying in the game. Freedom is the dividend that makes the whole process worth it. The strategy is not glamorous, but it is powerful because it aligns money with endurance. For a practical viewer, the question is not whether you can find the one perfect investment. The question is whether your whole financial life is built to last. Do you have enough savings to avoid forced decisions? Is your debt load compatible with surprise? Can you hold your investments through ordinary volatility? Are you buying freedom? Or are you buying new reasons to need the next paycheck? There's a useful tension between the chapters on tails and freedom. Tail events reward staying exposed to upside, but freedom often asks you to avoid being overexposed to ruin. Housel is not saying take no risk. He is saying take risks that you can survive and avoid risks that can remove you from the game. That is the difference between volatility and ruin. Volatility is uncomfortable. Ruin is terminal. A temporary decline in a diversified portfolio may be the fee for long-term returns. A leveraged bet that forces liquidation can end the story. Mature investing tries to tolerate the first and avoid the second. This is why boring diversification is more profound than it looks. Diversification admits ignorance. It says, I do not know which company, sector, country, or idea will produce the best future returns, so I will not make my entire life depend on one guess. That admission can feel less exciting than conviction, but is often more aligned with survival. The Freedom chapter also gives saving an emotional purpose. Many people hear save more as deprivation. Housel reframes it as buying control. You are not merely refusing today's pleasure. You are purchasing tomorrow's ability to choose. The future benefit may not be visible today, but it can be enormous when life presents a fork in the road. So the second part is not anti-ambition. It is anti-fragility. It wants you to grow wealth in a way that keeps you alive long enough to benefit from growth. It wants you to respect time without assuming time will rescue a reckless plan. And it wants you to remember that the final reward is not a number. It is a day that belongs more fully to you. This also explains why Housel keeps returning to endurance rather than excitement. Excitement can start a financial plan, but endurance is what lets it matter. The person who can keep saving during dull years, keep investing during scary years, and keep expectations under control during good years has a behavioral edge that no hot tip can replace.